Okay, greetings everybody. Um, going to try and make this a fairly short lecture. Um, Stand by. Okay, here we are, lecture number 6. Man, can't believe we're 3/4 of the way through this course already. Most of you are cruising right along, doing well. So we'll just continue this. This week you've got 2 supplemental videos to watch about globalization. So I'll try to leave a little extra time. And also this week, pay close attention to the instructions in the lecture, on the slides, and in the classroom, because I have reduced the amount of work for Langer and Bourgeois, because I want you to focus more on this week's big assignment, which you all saw in the syllabus, the portfolio project, where you'll analyze the competitive strategy of a global IT company, or at least a company that leverages IT. Okay, so we'll go on here. Some good stuff from Bourgeois. For some reason, there we are. Okay, first of chapter 11, globalization and the digital divide, the haves and the have-nots. These were your objectives right out of the text. Um, Globalization, yeah, the exchange of everything, of ideas, people, products, languages, culture, everything, music, across national borders. Um, and, most people would tell you modern telecommunications has really enabled that. Modern telecommunications, transportation. When you read Bourgeois, you'll see a lot of technologies that all kind of came together, not necessarily related. It was just sort of like, evolution on different paths, but all kind of came together to create this economic uh, giant global economy that we've got going now. It's just unbelievable. But this is internet access numbers. Of course, it's grown like crazy since mid '90s was kind of when everybody kind of got online, and the World Wide Web became accessible. Dial-up hit and everything really big, really big, right around 94, 95, 96. And before you knew it, everybody had it, or at least knew about it and wanted to get on it. So that's the big enabler of globalization that everyone's pointing to. I would also point to the shipping container and modern supply chain management. But, that's just my theory. Okay. And of course, then we've got this network society. Um, and I mean, there have just been so many examples. It's impossible to ignore anymore. All the way from the Arab Spring to the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, One of the big things for you to consider this week is Thomas Friedman's book. I've got a copy of it on my shelf, as a matter of fact. The World is Flat. It came out about 15 years ago, and it sort of foreshadowed what we're seeing. It was, you could say, it was a little bit of a flash of the obvious. A lot of people will say it's a anecdotal work, which is true. Uh, so you're going to want to be familiar with Friedman. I posted one like 7-minute video that goes over some of the principles um, uh, that he espoused. But if you can read a review, I mean, it's a thick book. It's an inch and a half thick. It's 4 times as thick as Langer. Um, I don't expect you to read it for 1 week, but it's a fairly important book on the topic of globalization and the internet and digital transformation and all of that. And Friedman's a pretty famous guy. I was lucky enough to get another book autographed by him. He was on a trip with my commanding officer when I was in the military. We went on a visiting trip to several of our key allies in Southwest Asia, and Friedman was along as a journalist. Smart guy, good guy. So anyway, um, be familiar with his tenets, and it's for no other reason. It makes for educated discussions at work. And then we'll also compare that to the TED talk. That's maybe, hold on just a second. Maybe it's not so flat. We're not interacting as much as we thought we might. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. See what you guys think. You guys are going to compare and contrast those in your discussion this week. Um, but the a global firm. This is what you'll be concentrating on for your portfolio project. A global firm, a firm that operates across national boundaries, um, that has operations and leverages IT. It can be one of the big Indian companies if you want. Infosys, Mahindra Tractors is the largest tractor maker in the country. That's an Indian company. It can be, a global company, Amazon. I mean, a U.S. company, Amazon or Apple, that operates globally. Alibaba is a Chinese company that's kind of overtaking Amazon in parts of the world. But pick a company with global Siemens, as we learned last week. Um, a company that's got global aspect. I don't want to see. In fact, if you pick an an obvious, easy company that is so big that you're going to have trouble writing about it in 3 pages, like Google or Amazon, I'm gonna grade you harder. So pick something else, okay, guys. Don't go screaming for the easy um, companies, please, if you can. Um, I'd rather read 30 different papers this week than 30 papers on with the same points on Amazon. All right. So just bear that in mind as you prepare this products. 350 points, guys. So um, you're going to want to stay away from the study sites and the social media, and turn in something original. Okay, so these are the aspects of a global company, and the many challenges, different time zones, different national regulations that they have to deal with inside of those countries that they operate in, different labor laws, uh, everything, languages, and then just getting goods shipped around the world. Everything works great as long as the supply chain keeps moving. But as we saw in this pandemic, when people get told stay home, who's unloading the ships right now in California? California's under a stay-at-home regulation. Who's unloading? Who's loading the ships in China? Who's unloading them in LA? Who's unloading the trucks full of normally full of food coming up from Mexico? I mean, when you've got these companies that operate across borders, everything's great until that logistics train falters. But there you go. That's a global firm. Sidebar of internet speeds. Yeah, yeah. Different countries have invested differently in different types of infrastructure. The digital divide. This was important. The people that have access to um, a computer, a network connection, and the training to use them, and the support group, the peers, the family that also use them and discuss issues together on social media and whatnot. So there's all of that, and it can cause divisions um, because of the economic benefit that it gives to those that have access to it. There's a usability divide for people that don't quite understand the technology. Senior citizens in the U.S. are the easy target. My mother's 86. She has a flip phone. She refuses. She doesn't even have texting turned on, so doesn't want anything to do with it. Neither does my mother-in-law. So that's the obvious comparison of the usability divide. It's the software can be a little complex if you're not. You guys were born with it. You guys are in that generation where you're born digital, and you really don't remember computers not being around. But put yourself in your grandparents' position, and it's a little bit different. And then, of course, there's the empowerment that having a computer brings. You can look up the information yourself. You can make your own mind up. You can speak your mind freely. So there's an empowerment to societies that have access to this, as opposed to, I guess, North Korea would be the final, totally cut off, non-digital um, country. They've got an internal social media site. Can you imagine that? Government owned, only North Koreans on it, and all you're allowed to do is talk about how great things are in North Korea. I mean, yeah. Anyway, and then there's some further discussion in Bourgeois on the digital divide. So that's good to know. Um, okay, and then he went into ethics and legal implications. This was a good chapter, I thought. There's a lot of ethics that he goes over in detail in this chapter. Some of them jumped out at me quite a bit. The idea of intellectual property, that's really tough to protect in the digital era. Things can be copied and distributed so easily. Um, and he goes into these details. I won't um, belabor the point. So read about copyrights and patents and um, those sorts of things, and the protections placed upon digital information. One of the things I think is uh, interesting is like, okay, YouTube doesn't make it easy for you to download that content and watch it offline, especially like, download the MP4. YouTube wants you to watch that content within its platform, watching its advertising, because that's how they make money. They are sourcing free content from the internet, but it's not free uh, to put that content out on the internet. They've got infrastructure to deal with, so they put protections in place. You're starting to see more and more and more and more stuff like that. So um, trademarks, he goes into what's a trademark versus a logo versus a copyright, um, and some of the intellectual property arguments. There's a great list of legislation um, that he goes into. Four of them are here, but there were others. Um, a lot of you guys work in HIPAA. You've heard of GDPR if you haven't worked with it. FERPA, that second one, COPPA. Um, these all deal with your right as a company to collect data on people and what to do with it. Europe's going at it where as opposed to explicitly protecting yourself, the companies have to explicitly get your permission to track anything like uh, consumer usage or whatever. So it's a different approach. It's more people friendly, less corporation friendly, I guess, in Europe. So yeah, that was a great chapter. And then Langer, chapter 9 was all about cybersecurity culture and using his ROD, responsive organizational dynamism, model to kind of talk about cyber threats and cyber procedures and getting them ingrained into the culture. Um, so you know, that's a good one. Cybersecurity used to be something that people didn't even think about. Now it's ingrained in processes. It's part of the systems development lifecycle in most places. Every piece of software gets, retina scanned. Ports and protocols are only opened um, for specific applications, and they're locked down to particular IP addresses if they can be. So cybersecurity is now part of pretty much every employee's annual um, training. And then there's periodic spot checking. You get it into the culture. The University of the Cumberlands, they send us faculty phishing, or well, they're fake phishing simulated phishing messages to see who will click on them. And if you click on it, you get a little, hey there, you shouldn't have clicked on that link. It was kind of suspicious looking, and then again we have the recurring information. So you have all of these from the top down, from the strategic level oversight of the company, uh, thinking about the data that it holds and the risk levels, uh, inculcating a culture of security, figuring out ways to sequester the most critical data um, uh, from less critical data, analyzing the risk. There's cybersecurity insurance if you actually have if you get compromised. Um, uh, so uh, yeah, from the top down, strategic, all the way down to the user. There's a culture of protecting this important asset. You don't want to make it so well protected that it's unusable, but you want the culture of everyone there to be thinking about the information systems assets as corporate assets that need to be protected, and the data that needs to be protected, and being wary of the vulnerabilities that are out there in the world, like phishing attacks, or ransomware is another one you see propagated almost purely by email, malicious links in emails. So yeah, Langer, and then Langer folds that all into his rod model as we see here. So yeah, it's integrated across companies, and then down um, through the architecture of the organization. Yeah, organizational learning and application development. Um, the, the main vulnerability is the individual user. Um, but you can design things into your architecture that you know attachment filtering, antivirus software that's managed centrally, those sorts of things. Having the information security department um, with good visibility and breadth across the enterprise. These are all ways to assimilate a culture of cybersecurity. And then risk management. These, a lot of these are basic threat management, risk management. Where's it coming from? What are they trying to gain? Is this just, they call them script kiddies? Is this people that are just kind of fooling around with cyber penetration attempts? Is it physical? Is it financial? Is it a denial of service? Are they actually trying to shut down a website that they don't agree with? Maybe you hear about distributed denial of service attacks going against certain companies based on, or like the penetration of Sony Pictures by North Korea because they didn't like that movie. Uh, what was it? I saw it. I don't remember the name of it, but it wasn't very flattering. Uh, uh, the Dictator, I think. Yeah. Anyway, and then um, what's the threat vector? Is it USB drives? Is it a worm? Is it beneath the TCP/IP layer and more like a layer 3 control protocol? There's all kinds of different ways for these threat agents to work. Is it a Wi-Fi vulnerability? And then are they willing to get caught? Is this state sponsored, or if they get caught, are they going to be protected by their own government? Often they are. There's a whole lot of cybercrime going on in countries that we know what's going on, and the country will not extradite, will not arrest, because those cyber criminals are not fooling around with the local population. They're only fooling around with rich Westerners. So you get the ridiculous calls from Microsoft tech support, and it's always someone they're not from America, calling you to tell you that your system is being penetrated and you need to give them your password. And these calls are being done at an industrial level from outside of the borders of the U.S. And the bad actors are doing it with impunity, and often with help from the host government. What you gonna do about that? So, some great questions to ask if you're doing risk management within your own corporation. And then, of course, um, wouldn't be Langer without talking about drivers versus supporters. And so, uh, a lot of this stuff, is out of your control now. Um, you've got staff outside of your company. You've got, in any major corporation, you've got contractors on your infrastructure that work for an outside company. You've almost certainly got software that's constantly being updated. That you don't know where the software engineers are, and you know vulnerabilities that could be placed in that software. You don't know. It's too complex. So you just have to take that into account. Now, this next chapter, we're not gonna focus on. You'll notice in the homework, like I said, I pared this down to about half. But this digital transformation is everything. It's a great chapter, but it's just too wide open to deal with when we got such a big paper due this week. Um, but it's worth a read. And digital transformation, we're seeing it. It's the transformation of entertainment has moved from going outside to play football to staying inside and playing football on EA Sports. And esports have become almost as profitable as regular sports. And people are watching movies on Netflix, and they're starting to release new releases uh, by on demand through the cable systems. Everything is transforming. Um, you know, Dating, education. So digital transformation is so pervasive. It's hard to see what hasn't been disrupted because of that. Um, and then, Langer went into 6 ways that the IT department can help the company stay more engaged through these factors on here, which we've all seen. Some of you are in big data analytics, social media, sentiment mining, reviews. All of those are are ways for IT to stay engaged with customers. Um, yeah, digital disruption. They used. There was a good chart. Let me see if it's. No, it's not in my slides. In the book, it showed how long it took to get to 50 million users for some technologies. This stuff happens really quickly now. Um, so yeah, this little graphical wheel is not really all that, but um, look at the disruption the iPhone caused. Do you guys? That was 13 years ago. Um, you might have, maybe your parents or your older siblings. Maybe you guys are old enough to have had a BlackBerry. They were really the main corporate cell phone, and the killer app on a BlackBerry was that it had a hard keyboard and you could email. You could check your email and send that. And BlackBerry even hosted corporate emails sometimes, email accounts so that busy executives, it was a status symbol. And then the iPhone came out and everything changed, disrupted their whole RIM, that company, Research in Motion, tanked in like 2 years. Everybody that thought they were super cool with a BlackBerry wanted an iPhone. So things come along like that disrupt everything. The internet from 1995 to 2000, the internet, just the PC and the internet, um, showed the potential to just shut down everything. You started seeing the decay of traditional bookstores in very short period of time. Traditional retailers. So anyway, yeah, digital transformation causes digital disruption. Um, So there's that one. And then he does a discussion of Porter's 5 forces and digital disruption. I would argue that there are less and less and less barriers to entry. That the internet is the great equalizer, and there's nothing to keep. There's nothing to keep eBay. You could if you came out with something that was uh, better for the people listing their stuff, a better marketplace than eBay. Call it MyBay. Bam, you're in. Bitcoin has no lock on anything. You could create MyCoin, and if people had a perceived value, it would take off like Bitcoin did. So yeah, the internet and all of this digital technology to me just opens up everything. I could write a hit song, record it in my home studio office here that I'm sitting in, put it on iTunes, and if enough people started liking it and sharing it, I could be a millionaire overnight. Where you know, in the traditional music world, you had to get an agent, and you had to get a record contract, and you had to sell certain numbers of records, and you had to go out on tour, and all of this digitization, this digital transformation has just changed all of that. To the point where there are no barriers. Um, but then again, everyone has access to that technology, as we've talked about. IT, does IT matter anymore? It's a commodity now. It's how you use it. It's how you use it. I think it's a gotta have. It's like electricity, but it's all in how you employ it. And then of course we got Langer using his driver to support status, and you never outsource anything until it becomes a support function. Okay. Oh, the S curve. Yeah, it's like uh, things things come out and they start to get adopted, but they're expensive because the supply's real low, and then you get this you know exponential growth in its acceptance and use, and then the price comes down, and then it kind of levels off, and then it's no longer uh, it's just a given, whatever that technology is. But we're not, like I said, we're not concentrating on this chapter. So give it a lead, but don't give it a read, but don't focus on it. I want to get to uh, our assignments. Um, so yeah, at the end there, the unified digital platform, that's enterprise architecture. Um, you've got a whole lot of companies out there that are still just a bunch of different stovepipes. And at the end of the chapter, Langer goes into some good food for thought there for a digital organization to be optimal. Okay. Here's the discussion, guys. We're going to compare, and I'm going to mispronounce this. I'm sure Pankaj Ghemawat, his TED Talk, "The World Isn't So Flat." He produces some metrics that counter Thomas Friedman's statement of the obvious that internet technologies have flattened the world. Um, so I want you guys to talk about globalization and this and that, and you guys can use the difficulty in moving between countries to work. That's a personal example. The visa systems can be just a gigantic headache, as you guys know. Well, way more than I do. You can use that, or how hard it is to communicate amongst a global team, if um, uh, or or you can be, pro Friedman. You can take this. You can discuss it as, Friedman's more correct than Gemavot. It's up to you guys. Should be an interesting conversation. Just write originally and conversationally. Again, I'm still seeing Captain Obvious lecturing of each other, but I guess I'm not going to be able to stop that. So that's your discussion this week. Notice that I've chopped the bourgeois in half. Even numbers only on chapter 11, odd numbers only on chapter 12. So yeah, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. Okay. So if you don't catch that and you do more work, it's not my fault. Okay. And Langer, like I said, We're not doing digital transformation, but cybersecurity is critical enough that I do want you to turn in a page on uh, um, the assimilation of a cybersecurity culture. And then the big assignment this week, portfolio project, 350 points. Yeah, choose a global market, and these are your four sections. Okay, you notice how you got four things you're doing there? I should see four headings in an APA paper. And again, you'll notice at the bottom there's three approved references at least. You can use practitioner sources. Some of this stuff's kind of hard to find in the academic journals. But if you find a good article in, Forbes or Business Week or, Harvard Business Review or those sorts of, Sloan Management Review, try and use good sources. Um, well, although HBR and Sloan aren't really practitioner, they're peer reviewed. Anyway, you may not find what you're looking for in traditional peer reviewed journal articles. So try and find what you can, and then tell the story of this company. Again, uh, I would really prefer you not pick the giant, uh, Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook. Um, but if you can find good information on them and tell a clear story originally, in your own words, I would hate to turn somebody in. Again, I gave a couple zeros for the midterm, for folks not turning in original work. Um, this one, you can't you can't pass the course if you don't get full credit on this one, or if you don't get all the points on this one. You don't want to take a zero, okay? So that's the big project. Of course, there's are our references. And as always, I'm available on email. I check my email several times a day. Um, you are welcome to shoot me any questions or concerns this week. And I bid you a good week.